Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is RASYIDAH binti Muhammad RAZALLI with entry number 2018672458 from group S12055I.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is NUREEN ATIKA binti AMIR SHAHID from AS12055I.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is NORARINA binti RUSTAM, and today I will present to you about our project in section Abstract, Introduction and Literature Review. So, move on to the abstract section. Actually, this project was conducted to produce a paper from the combination of coconut husk and corn husk. And the paper we want is actually the one that has the highest tensile strength, highest wet endurance, and greatest folding endurance. And that's why we prepared 7 samples with different ratio of each to determine which ratio is the best paper with the highest tensile strength, highest wet endurance, and greatest folding endurance. And the result we obtained is 2:1, which is 2 is for the coconut husk and 1 is for corn husk. %42% of all global wood harvest is used to make paper, and this is quite worrisome, and therefore we propose an alternative, which is coconut husk and corn husk, to reduce the usage of paper made from wood. But not only that reason why we choose coconut husk and corn husk, the reason is because they are rich in fiber, therefore they are suitable to make paper. For your information, the manufacture of paper from the traditional way involves easily used fibers of various grades of wood if we use wood, and these are pulverized into small granules or sawdust like particles, which then can be mixed with water. After that, a pulp, which is an aqueous suspension or dispersion, and then it can be formed in a homogeneous mass. This pulp solution can be dispersed through jets or nozzles onto a moving screen, or we call as wires, because it is fluid enough to move and consistent. The screen or wire can make the excess of water drain off and provide a means of laying out the wet pulp in a uniform thickness to form a web. And then the pulp needed to pass through 2 rollers with different function. The first one to squeeze, and it is to drain off the remaining liquid, and the other is to straighten the web or sheet, which over a bulk conveyor passes through the heated cylinders for a purpose, and finally the sheet is then cooled as.
Hi, it's NUREEN again, and here I will be explaining the methodology that can be divided into 3 parts, which is first, the preparation of the husk base, second is the papermaking, and the third is the strength test of the paper. So let's get started. So this is the first part of the methodology, which is the preparation of the husk base. So firstly, we are using a fresh coconut and 5 corn, and their husk is removed and placed into 2 separate bowls. So next, the husks are placed into 2 different pots and filled with water until it's covered all the husks. For a liter of water, 1 teaspoon of sodium bicarbonate is mixed in the pot. The pot is then brought to boil for 2 hours until the husk becomes soft. And after the husk becomes soft, the water is drained and the husk is washed thoroughly to remove all the bicarbonate from the husk. The third step, after the husk is being washed, the husk is being cut into a smaller bit so it will be easier to blend and a finer paste will be formed. And lastly, the coconut husk and corn husk are blended separately with water until a thick fine paste is formed. Now we are moving on to the second part, which is the papermaking. So next, for the first sample, 2 cups of coconut husk paste from the first part earlier were placed in a large container and mixed well. Then the frame was placed at the bottom of the container and shake a little with its lift slowly until a thin layer of husk paper is formed on the frame. So in this part, we are using our DIY paper making frame to make the paper. So a large container that can fit the paper frame are prepared and filled with water until half of the container is full. So then, the outer frame is removed to expose the wet paper. A piece of cloth placed on a flat surface and the frame with the wet paper layer were placed upside down. The excess water is removed from the layer using a sponge. After the frame is removed, it will leave only a wet paper on the cloth. Another clothes are placed on the paper and a weight is put on top so the paper will be compressed. After all the steps are repeated with 7 different ratios of coconut and corn husks, the sample are placed under the sun until it dries. This is the last step of the methodology, which is the strength test of the paper. So in this part as well, we have 3 different tests, which is dry strength paper test, wet strength paper test, and folding paper test. So for the first test, which is the dry strength paper test, a strip of paper from first sample is taken and the both end of the paper is held. The paper is pulled slowly and the strength will increase gradually until the paper breaks into 2. Using a timer, the time for the paper to break down were taken. The steps are repeated with all 7 samples. Next is the second test, which is the wet strength of paper test. So first, a strip of paper from each sample is taken and a dropper is used to drop 3 drops of water in the middle of each strip of paper. The paper is then let until all the water absorbed completely. One of the strip is taken and hung on the instrument as shown on the next slide later. The marble was put in the cup one by one slowly until the paper breaks apart. The number of marbles in the cup are counted and the result were recorded. And lastly is the folding papers test. A strip of sample is taken and folded into half. The number of folds are taken and the test were repeated with the rest of the sample. The folded part is opened and closed repeatedly until the paper breaks with a constant force.
This is the result and analysis part. As you can see at the figure, there are 7 samples with a different ratio of the coconut and cone husk. The structure of the sample 1 was a very rough and color was dark. The structure of the sample 2 was quite soft and the color was bright than sample 1 and sample 6. The sample 3 have a very soft structure among all the sample and it was brown like a soil color. The structure of the sample 4 was rough because some of the fiber is not fresh and the color was bright like sample 2. Sample 5 structure looked very soft and smooth from other. The sample 6 and sample 7 structure was so rough because they have some fibers not fresh. In this result, we can see there have 7 samples with a different ratio of the coconut and cone husk. We determine the strength of the pepper with the 3 different strength pepper tests, which is the dry pepper test, wet pepper test, and folding pepper test. So we can observe that from the result on the table. As we can see from the analysis of the graph bar chart of the sample and the strength pepper test, for the graph 1, which is the bar chart of the sample and the wet strength pepper test, we can observe the sample 4, which has the ratio to coconut husk and 1 cone husk, was higher from among the sample and it can hold 19 pieces of the marble. Next, the graph 2, we can observe the sample 4 is the strongest among the dry pepper test with 7.89 seconds due to the pepper tone. From the graph 3, we can see with the greatest number of the folding, which is the 34, sample 4 shows the higher amount of the folding that it can do before it breaks, and it contains 2 coconut husk and 1 cone husk, so that we can conclude that sample 4 has the higher strength pepper test among all the samples. In the discussion slide, we separate 3 different types of discussion, which is first is the result, second is the limitation, and the third is suggestion. For the result part, we have able to determine which the suitable ratio of the coconut and the cone has to produce pepper with the higher wet strength pepper test, the higher dry strength pepper test, and the greatest folding pepper test. In this experiment, we can observe that the sample 4, which have the ratio 2 coconut and 1 cone, has the potential material used in paper making. We can also observe from the graph 1, graph 2, and graph 3 as the analysis that the sample has the highest of wet strength pepper test, dry strength pepper test, and the folding pepper test. This experiment also was able to determine the sample 6 with the ratio of 1 coconut and 3 cone husk will not be suitable as the alternative for making the pepper due to its low wet strength pepper test and the folding pepper test. The limitation that we faced during the experiment was the equipment. The equipment that we used, that the kitchen blender to grind the coconut and cone husk. Kitchen blender has less power, so that the ingredients are less crushed and not smooth. Due to that, the structure of the sample was not smooth and rough. After that, the limitation is to control the thickness of the pepper was very difficult because the force that applied to the pepper is not same and the access to the resource and equipment. In the industry pepper, hydraulic pressure are generally used to remove the water from the pepper, and this machine apply a pressure evenly across the whole sheet of the pepper, allowing the fiber to be evenly distributed. Next, the different conditions under which different precipitation of the pepper were dry may also have contributed to inconsistency due to the difference in the outdoor temperature and humidity on different days. Although it was not possible to complete all the 7 samples of the experiment on one day to allow them all to dry under the same condition. The suggestion to improve the method of the experiment explainable could be applied, and more suitable equipment could be utilized further. Investigation could be taken into the suitability of the similar waste due to the coconut and cone husk as a possible alternative to make the paper. It is because the coconut and cone husk are very hard and clean to grind by using the home appliance such as the kitchen blender, so that the special machine is needed to grind the coconut and cone husk to make the paper become more smooth and not rough. After that, the suggestion of the thickness of the paper, we used the hydraulic pressure was needed in this experiment to remove all the water from the paper and make the thickness of the paper same. Next, for the place that the paper was dry, it not have been better option to utilize the drying oven. Instead of that, the drying condition can be controlled, as the rate at which the paper dries may have effect in strength and quality of the fiber body. This is the conclusion part. To conclude all about this project, the objective of the feasibility of the coconut husk and cone husk is as the alternative paper was achieved. The coconut and cone husk can make the paper so that all the tree in this world will be safe. You can use this paper to make the handcraft or composition. It is not suitable to be used as paper for writing because of it has a rough and uneven structure. For ratio that's suitable for making paper is 2 for the coconut husk and 1 for the cone husk. To determine the quality of the component that yield the best paper is we need to put more coconut husk than the cone husk in the sample. We need to mix the two materials evenly and the ratio is not too far to ensure that balance of the ingredient contained in each of the sample. Lastly, the objective of save the earth with reducing the tree logging was achieved. It is because the plain paper can be converted to this paper, which can be used to make the handicraft paper, and from that we do not need to waste the paper from the tree. So from the objective, we can conclude that making the paper from the